welcome to the Superversive Sunday live stream. I'm here with good friend of the show, Cirsova. How are you doing today, sir? Oh no, I knew him going silent and not getting any more mic feedback was a bad thing. Hello, everyone, and
He'll be
welcome
back.
to the
He'll
Superversive
be back.
Sunday
They always come back.
live stream.
What's up?
I'm here. You there?
You mute me? Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, good. I got scared for a second. Uh, so how are you doing today, Cirsova?
Thanks for having me.
It's always a pleasure. I honestly don't have guys like you and Brian Niemeyer and others enough. So let's talk about. I'm kind of trying to bring in self-publishers and publishers in. For at least the first month or so of January. I've got Brian Niemeyer on next week, I believe, or is it Richard Palini? I should figure that out. But I'll be having them up next week, but this week's yours. Uh, so tell us about 2019 and what you're planning on going into in 2020. Oh no.
Oh, well, hopefully I will have a better internet connection in the future. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
I had a bit of a hiccup here.
That's fair. I have the fortune of living nearby to charter executives. So if all else fails, I'm planning on finding their house and banging on doors until I get good internet. But that's just
Nice.
me, and they ask me to stop often. But that's okay.
I live in the hood and had to switch to cable because the DSL here was so bad when I moved. In the nicer, wealthier parts of town, DSL was adequate, but oh man, you move to the hood here in Little Rock, your internet's garbage unless you have cable.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
But
well, I live
2019's a
Go for it.
2019 was a pretty crazy busy year for us. We had, I want to say, 14 releases in total. We started off the year with Dual Visions, which was an anthology of macabre weird fiction by Misha Burnett and Louise Sorensen. That came out in February, which was an excellent title that was unfortunately a bit overshadowed by our spring release, because our spring issue was both the relaunch of the magazine under its new title, Magazine of Thrilling Adventure and Daring Suspense, and featured a previously lost Edgar Rice Burroughs Tarzan story as the cover feature. After that, we put out a 70th anniversary edition of Lee Brackett's Stark Adventures. Had those illustrated by Star 2. We also, around that time, had a summer special, which was something new that we did. We got a whole lot of novellas and novelettes that we decided it was just a little bit too hard to try to build issues around, but we really liked them. So what we did was we just had an all longer story special. So we had our summer special that had Halcyon by Carolyn Furlong and a handful of other novelette-linked works. And then we went right from that into the Wild Stars 35th anniversary set. Michael Tierney, our local comic guy, who I've been friends with for a few years now and who has been a regular Cirsova contributor, has been working on this Sword and Planet ray gun adventure epic for decades now, and we published the third volume last year, or year before last, and last spring we were talking about putting out a new one, and I'm like, well, at the last one we have this one, but this one really, I feel like, makes the early stuff better, but you appreciate it if you've also read the early stuff. So we decided to go ahead and do a full blown anniversary reissue of the first two books. The first one was a comic, the second one was a novel that was expanded out from a comic. So you have a couple chapters of the novel that were originally released as comic books that the rest of the novels kind of built around.
Hmm.
And so we put out those. We put out an incredibly gorgeous 700 plus page omnibus with some amazing art by Anton Oxenick on the cover. And then after that, we put out our fall issue with Pawn to the Queen by Christine Lucas. That came out around September last year. And then I spent most of the rest of 2019 combing through stories for 2020. And 2020 is looking like it's going to be our biggest year yet. We've got 3 regular issues, 2 specials, probably about 7,000 or 700,000 words of fiction that we'll be publishing on
Oh,
top of all of our other plans. Yeah.
nice. And just so you know, like 700,000 words. You said 700,000 words, right?
Yes.
You
Yes.
know, that's a substantial thing. That's like Harry Potter on top of Lord of the Rings, including the Silmarillion, on top of, so on and so forth. Or perhaps three and a half. Uh, oh my goodness, Wheel of Time books. The
Actually, I'm doing some checking in my head. I think I may have overstated that a little bit. It's probably close to 350,000 words. It was that we had to comb down or cull down from the 700 odd thousand words of stories that we wanted to publish, and had to turn a lot away. We
hmm.
got probably 2 to 3 million words of fiction last fall to read, and just so much of it was just so good.
Oh yeah. Cirsova is the one magazine I keep up with, even if I don't really have time to read anything. As soon as I discovered doing research for this show that you had the fall issue out, that somehow it just went whew, past my Amazon algorithm. I immediately picked it up, and I'm going to be adding it to my physical collection, which I'm feeling an itch to read through again, especially for the Skylar Hernstrom, which are always a favorite of mine. But I do want to
So
point out,
yeah.
hmm, which, by the
Oh,
way,
I was going to say that we do have more Skylar Hernstrom coming up this year. We have
oh,
a spy-fi thriller that was originally slated to be published. Uh,
hmm,
the YouTube link unfroze. I'm having some browser issues, but yeah, we have a Skylar Hernstrom spy-fi thriller that was originally going to be in a different anthology that fell through a couple of years ago. So we're really happy that we're going to have that one, and that one will be in our summer special, which is different from our summer issue. We hope that won't cause too much confusion, but we've got a summer special and a summer regular issue this year.
right, it's fantastic. I do want to point out with the fall issue, Pawn of the Queen, the cover, the main event, is by Christine Lucas. At his mentor's dying request, the high priest of Anubis must right a dreadful wrong, recover and return the canopic jars of Queen Tetishiri to end a curse. Fantastic. I'm already excited, and Egyptian themes are my absolute favorite aesthetic when it comes to ancient period pieces, I guess.
Yeah, we were really happy to get that story from Christine. She had a story with us in our 4th issue back from 2016. This is the first story she sent us since then. And real happy to have it. We've got another one by her this year. It's actually going to be a sequel to this story, so you'll have further adventures of the High Priest of Anubis here.
Excellent. Absolutely fantastic. Uh, yeah, I'm just kind of looking through all of it. Most of it seems to be kind of fantasy, a little bit, set in the past, like this Egyptian one. Uh, But let's see here. Hmm. Take the Hand by uh lol I can't really pronounce the name. There's a lot of J's and L's in the name. By Mary Brennan, an anthropologist seeks to solve the mystery of Calcatuatan's grinding woman. What's the significance? What is it she grinds? And what does she wait? All
That
kinds of.
one,
Hmm?
yeah, that one was actually one of the recommended reading list for from Tangent this year. That's by La Modera, The Grinding Woman by Marie Brennan. She sent us an excellent weird story, and I just like, wow, this is definitely classic weird tales type macabre fiction, and so I was thrilled to have the chance to publish it in this issue.
Mm. Oh yeah, it's fantastic. I've expressed my love for Skylar Hernstrom, but many a time I've found names I don't recognize, but have enjoyed immensely, just because they're quality craftsmen of the writing arts, and create a just an outstanding pieces, well worth
Yeah.
the cover you give them.
Yeah. And I've got just some really amazing stuff lined up for the spring issue that I'd love to tell you guys about.
Go
We
for it.
have the return of Michael Reese's Clock in Alpdruck. I don't know how many of the Clock stories you've read. He's published 2 with us. He's also published 2 anthologies or fix-ups that I've actually helped with the layout and cover designs for. Not the art. He's got someone amazing doing some really cool art with that. But if you like weird urban fantasy stuff, and this new adventure, the invisible dwarf from Coney Island descends into hell with the shade of Jack the Ripper to stop the Zodiac Killer from completing his evil plans to unleash his nightmares upon Earth.
Outstanding.
Yeah.
Outstanding.
We've also got a new Darien and Blue Rogues of Mirth story from Robert Zoltan. If you like Fafford and Grey Mouser, but don't really like the fact that they're just complete and utter unlikable scumbags a lot of the times, especially in the later stories, then Darien and Blue is really good for that. It's closer to what if Fafford and Grey Mouser was a bit more superversive. And so we're really excited to have one of those stories in this upcoming issue.
Mm, fantastic. I wish like Fafford and the Grey Mouser shows up all the time, but I've only ever read their first novel, um, and
And their
it's
first novel is actually a significantly later novel because it's a prequel. They did the
really.
whole Michael Moorcock reordering everything chronologically. So the second book contains most of the stories that were written first, and they're actually some of the better stories. But after the end of the pulp era, Fritz Leiber rebooted the franchise with sort of a grim, dark, scummier take on the characters.
Hmm. I I didn't know that. Uh, but then again, I kind of focus my energies more on the 1930s and the Conan the Barbarians, and even before that, just
Uh,
because I enjoy the I don't know if it the craft, I guess I'm going to say, that they put in it and the language they used. But I'm fairly an anachronist rather than a modern man, so eh.
I want to say that the first Fafford and Grey Mouser stories, there were about uh, 8 or so of them that were from the 30s and 40s, and then he they did an anthology of it in the late 50s, and in the late 50s, early 60s, he started writing them again.
Mm, I getcha.
those pulp era ones are definitely the best stories.
Yep.
Speaking of Fafford and Grey Mouser type characters, we've also got more of Mongoose and Meerkat from Jim Brayfogle. That's been an ongoing feature that we've been having the last several issues, and this next issue is going to be a great place to hopefully feed into what we're doing. We're starting to put out anthologies of the Mongoose and Meerkat adventures. We're planning on doing an illustrated collection of the first 5 that we've published, plus an unpublished short novella by Jim Brayfogle, and that will be we'll be doing a Kickstarter for it right after the spring issue comes out. We'll probably be doing that in April.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how many people have followed some of the artists and personalities on comics Twitter, but we've actually got Dark Philly going to be doing the interior art for us. So we're really excited about that.
That does sound pretty great. You've maintained quality in, oh, I don't know, 3 years. Have you been doing this for
I think this is our 5th year now.
5th year? Fantastic. You've kept up a high level of quality, which I always appreciate, especially since, you're one of the longest names doing these, this magazine, these anthologies, to last, except for maybe
Yeah.
like things that are, that were started by like Arthur C. Clarke or Azo
There,
or
there
that
are there
nonsense.
are a couple people in our scene I think who've been around longer than us. I think Pulp Modern has been around since 2011, but we're
Hmm.
one of the older ones in our immediate scene now, and the tragedy of broadswords and blasters going away just sort of hammers home how small the independent pulp scene is right now,
Mm-hmm.
because there's so many great stories out there, just not enough outlets for all of them. That was one of the main reasons why I started the magazine. Is I'm like, people are surely out there writing the kind of stories that I like. They just need a place to publish them, and it's definitely not places like fantasy and science fiction anymore, or Clark's World, or Analog.
I gotcha. Uh, yeah, that's fair. But it's I haven't even heard of Pulp Modern until you just now mentioned it. But I'll definitely check them out. Um, a lot of it is also I've noticed that the algorithm just hasn't been favorable um, for a lot of things. There's been some people gaming the algorithm, with like cheap and terrible novels. For some reason, harem fiction, which don't get me wrong, I'm a good Christian boy, but I'm no prude, has been like dominating everything with its we're not porn, but we're porn. And a thousand other things that I don't know what your algorithm looks like, but it's like I don't care about this, I don't care about that. You know, I want an actually good story, not uh, some pirate captain sleeping his way through various other pirate queens for it. And of course, it sort of stands up there. I've got your Cirsova magazines on the shelf with Larry Correa's Monster Hunter series and his Son of the Black Sword series and his Diesel Punk series. So that's about where you fit in, which is sadly under the Superversive Press books, which is under the John C. Wright shelf, which I recommend everyone developing um, their own John C. Wright shelf. Uh, but that's a stream for another day. So, is the next thing you're going to be your spring issue in April?
Actually, the spring issue is in March. We're going to be doing the Kickstarter for the Mongoose and Meerkat Volume 1 in April. Then in May, we have the summer special. And then I get a very short break and have the actual summer issue out in August.
Excellent. Just in time for my birthday. That's how I like it.
Yep.
Hmm. So you've got 3 issues next year?
Uh, 3 regulars and 2 specials.
That's right.
We have a fall special that is slated, I think, for October, and then at the end of December we've got a winter issue.
Woolly Ram asks, where do I put Vox's fiction? I don't have any physical copies of his stuff, but I do have Corporate Cancer over the Galaxy's Edge bookshelf for some reason. I don't know. I need a librarian. Just like pull one out. Actually, that's a good horror film, horror story. Like you get a librarian, right? Some vampire kidnaps the librarian, and now she has to like organize his library before the sun sets, or she's dead. That's fantastic. Are you alright, Cirsova? Oh no. Ah well, internet being what it is. I mean, that'd be a pretty easy one to do actually. Uh, Opportunity for scares, for horrors, and then that Beauty and the Beast thing, and then the vampire, is actually evil and not misunderstood like she originally was thinking, uh, because Disney has led her astray. Hmm.
And I actually managed to get the YouTube thing up and muted so I can see the chat. Hello, chat.
I'm glad you did.
One guy in chat.
Right. It's Woolly Ram. He says, obviously, she finds a Bible with a silver crucifix in its binding. Absolutely. Left by a, Belmont or something of earlier, Van Helsing of earlier times. Yes, my greatest mortal enemy. I keep his tools in this glass case. You know, all the tools are there for her escape, but does she succumb to her librarian instincts or does she fight the vampire? Who knows? Willie Ram,
Turn that into a Toho fanfic. Because in Toho, there is a vampire who's got both a maid and a librarian.
Absolutely. So, let's see here. He's asked a few questions and I've answered them. But how about this? Someone comes up to you and says it's just a movie, book slash game or whatever. How do you respond to that?
I don't know. It depends on what the context is.
Well, it just comes up, like why do you spend so much time and I assume money on this? For a series that is good, is worth it, but
Oh, well, it's just kind of a hobby and a passion and a drive, and it's one of those things that keeps me going.
absolutely. I find I've met a lot of people in this era that kind of don't have something to keep them going, except for, making money or something like that, which works until you have your heart's desire and then you realize something quite literary and ironic. It's a nice little thing. Uh, I wrote in chat.
Oh, go ahead.
I just realized I wrote in chat. I'm with Cirsova, right? Nova. I shouldn't have killed this monster just before the stream, but that's fair. It's the life I choose to live. Ah,
So, with our new issue out in about 2 months from tomorrow, actually, because it'll be out March 13th. With it coming out 2 months from tomorrow, we're trying to fill ad space, and we're trying to get everything in hopefully by the end of January.
excellent.
The new issue is currently in the hands of Mark, one of our trusted copy editors. We've already got Javier's copy edits in. So once I get the stuff back from Mark, we're going to be giving it a final pass from the contributors and getting it off to the printer to get a proof and then getting it up for pre-order on Amazon. So we really only have about 2-3 weeks left to fill advertisements. And with how much we bought this year, we are definitely going to need some ads to help defray our operating costs.
Absolutely. How much does an ad run?
Well, you can find it on our website, cirsova.wordpress.com, but we have our ads available. That's the full back cover. We've got the one for March already lined up. Those go for $125, but we've got 3, maybe 4 covers still available. For the interior, we have 250 character text ads for $25, quarter page advertisements for $35, and our best interior deal is a half page ad for $50.
Nice. Nice. Always, Woolly Ram asks, how much do Cirsova issues cost? And also to see if Raid Shadow Legends will sponsor you. Now, I am not sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends, but I'm saying if you want, throw some advertising money my way, I'll take it. Like I only care about my art in the form of writing. These streams, whew, I'm for sale. Just kind of strip off the robe a bit. It's like Raid Shadow Legends tattooed on the chest. It's great.
Uh,
But anyway, just so you know, the latest issue on Amazon, the fall issue, which I've linked in the chat, is $9 for the paperback. I always recommend buying physical copies whenever possible. Not only does it send more money to the publisher, but also it looks good on the shelf, which is more important to me than just about anything else, except for the words within it, of
yeah.
course.
Our digital copies are the standard $2.99s. The paperback copies cost around $10 each. We might have to mark the price up just a little bit this year to make up for the fact that we're really trying to keep our rates what we've been paying them. We don't want to ever go backwards and pay people less.
Mm-hmm.
And since we're offering more content, especially the summer and fall specials, we have in the past had a fairly generous, easy on the eyes 14-point font, but we might be trimming that down to 12 for the specials so that we can have twice the content with only 20 to 30% more page count just to keep costs down for everyone.
I get you. Oh, Willie Ram says physical copies are tricky. No shelf space. I know. And I know a lot of people don't have my luxury of basically being planted in the heart of St. Louis City with a brick house that would resist the apocalypse itself. Uh, but,
Suppose with no shelf space, he wouldn't be interested in our hardcovers. We do offer hardcovers that are ad free of every issue, and they have gorgeous dust jackets, and they run about $30 a copy.
Wow. That's fantastic. And that's not the same as the volumes, right? That's
No,
no.
no.
Okay, yeah, that's a collection of the volumes.
Not exactly. The hardcover is just the issue in hardcover without any advertisements inside.
Okay.
That's the only real difference.
I get you. Well, that's fair. Uh,
The whole concept with volumes was last year we decided that we wanted to do something a little different. We kind of wanted to distance ourselves from being limited to science fiction and fantasy. And since we had a Tarzan cover story, Tarzan is technically science fiction and fantasy because it takes place in the same universe as Pellucidar, and you have Tarzan books where he's fighting serpent riding pirates and whatnot in the inner earth, but it's not necessarily what you think of as science fiction. So that let us have an opportunity to rebrand as an adventure fiction magazine.
I like it. It's yeah, and it is full of adventure. and mostly family friendly adventure too, except that it gets scary sometimes. Uh, but it's no, it's enjoyable, and the quality's evident of it. I know that these days everything's just kind of printed from Amazon. Uh, but they do look good. You can see all the words on the backgrounds of it, and they have a good weight to them. That's always important because I am part of the physical copy book master race. Uh, Much like I am a PC master race and other things besides. But that's just my damage, I guess. I'm not sure. The benefit of like I do want to take a second here. The benefit of buying physical copies, even if you struggle with shelf space, is that you can say that these things are Ragnarok proofing. We don't know when the next World War is going to happen. We don't know when this or that's going to happen, and uh, are boob plates and chainmails bikini family friendly for the males? Maybe the odd female, but mostly males. Uh, it's if Amazon goes down and you lose all your information, you're not going to get these books you've bought back. And a lot of the time, these books, honestly, like when they do a collection of like nine pulp sci-fi novels, it's not that great. Like I stop reading them halfway through. Not even because they're bad. I just don't care. But like that'll be gone, and I won't care. But my John C. Wright shelf. As long as like everything's not on fire, these books are gonna last, and then you pass it on to the next generation.
And one of the things that's been kind of interesting is everyone says and tells me like they just can't sell digital copies or physical copies of their books, whereas we're kind of the other way around, where most of our sales are the physical copies, paperbacks. We get a few people who get the ebooks, but for the most part, people want our magazine because it feels great in your hand. It looks really great in meat space. It looks good on your shelf,
Oh yeah.
and both those gorgeous covers that Anton's been doing with us for a couple of years now, and the interiors that we made the meticulous effort to try to give it the look and feel of the pulps.
Mm-hmm. And it's appreciated. It's appreciated a lot. Just because it creates like a culture of sorts of quality. When I like not that I think about this in Cirsova because I write novels more than anything else, but if I'm like judging things, there's the planetary anthologies that were moved to Richard Paulinelli's imprint. There's this, that, and the other thing that I see my friends doing, and it's like, how are their covers doing? How is this? How's that doing? Do I hold up to the quality of my peers? And having stuff that you do with Cirsova or is just kind of a hot air balloon for the soul. Uh, because it feels good. It's nice. I'm gonna be reading it at work, and then I'll have to explain. What's that one? The Black Pyramid by Skylar Hernstrom. Yeah, so he makes out with her for a minute, and then she loses and he dies. I don't get it. Well, it's important. It's about love. Yeah, honestly, he's at Wooly Ram still asking about age. I'm planning on having puzzle locks in front of my bookshelves to force my kids to think outside the box, to try and get at new books, so that it starts off and there's some free books there, Redwall and stuff like that, easy reads, and then there's going to be a riddle that leads them to the clue, which leads them to the key for the next round of shelves, which are slightly older. The only problem is that
He yeah, and Willie there mentions boob plate and chainmail bikinis. You don't really find boob plate and chainmail bikinis in Cirsova.
yeah, you don't.
I mean, not on the covers. I mean, you might feel free to imagine them in some cases, especially since we got a new story by DM Ritzlin, "Slave Girls for Sacrifice," coming up in the next issue, and I don't know if you're familiar with Dave, but he does DMR books, and they're very heavy metal sword and sorcery type stuff, and it's really awesome.
Oh
So
yeah.
we're pretty thrilled to have a story by him. But for the most part, no, we are not a boot plate chainmail bikini publication.
Actually, I think just going over everything that I've read of yours so far, the kiss in the Black Pyramid by Skylar Hernstrom, probably still my favorite story you guys have put out, is probably the most unchaste thing I can offhandedly remember. Uh,
We had some pretty grisly stuff in a couple of our issues. One of them especially by Howie Bentley. And I'm sad that we have not had a chance to have more stories by Howie Bentley because he's got some really good stuff. He's mostly published by DMR Books, but he had oh gosh, the name of it's escaping me, but it was in our fourth issue. The werewolf Viking who goes to the Tower of the Lich, and the Lich is having like all of these horrible orgies of pain, suffering, and lewdness, and the Viking werewolf is like, "Man, this is terrible," and kills the Lich.
Whoa, dude. Whoa, I've burned down a lot of English settlements, but this, no,
Yeah,
thank you. Uh,
where there is no sanctuary. That was the name of the story.
nice. I'll look forward to that one. So sandal punk is it's also I've also heard it called bronze punk, responding to a question in the chat. Sand punk is more like your dunes, Mad Max kind of if it wasn't so post-apocalyptic wasteland. Um, the but sandal punk is more Bronze Age, like everyone's going around in sandals in the desert.
And we actually have some of that. Like I said,
Oh yeah,
Christine Lucas has done some really good stuff along those lines. So
my go-to date movie is Brendan Fraser's The Mummy. I'm just gonna point that out. Make of it what you will, guys. Do you remember that one?
yeah, I cannot watch it the same, having seen a few episodes of Spartacus Blood and Titties.
I know, right? But
Uh,
I, I just don't care about that stuff. Like I could barely watch the first episode of The Witcher. I didn't care. Uh, with the stuff they put in
shows
there.
are so cringy.
I know. It's like, okay, well, we're gonna be edgy. It's like nobody cares. They did it better in the 1930s.
Yeah. The way I see it is it's all a big psyop to convince middle-aged ladies to talk about porn around the water cooler at work.
Oh,
The little
absolutely.
nice demure church marm type talking about the latest episode of Game of Thrones. And it's like, you just been tricked into watching porn
Right,
and talking about it at work like it was a normal thing.
right. It's like I'm watching The Mandalorian. It's fantastic. Not a single titillation in sight. But John Favreau knows his business. Hmm.
Ah, The Mandalorian. The thing that tricked everyone into thinking maybe Star Wars can still be good under Disney.
Right. It's like I've told people this. I know I've mentioned on this stream, but John Favreau likes his customers and is willing to give his customers what they want. That's why he's very successful. Occasionally he does a show about or a movie about cooking with like Scarlett Johansson and a few other of his friends, and then he goes back into the business of making customers happy. Like that's the whole like Favreau cycle. Say here, Willie Ram says Henry Cavill was wasted on The Witcher. He actually stepped into Geralt mentally. Actually, the only time I really tolerated The Witcher was when Henry Cavill was on screen. Otherwise, I literally didn't care. I just kind of wished Henry Cavill can come back on stream.
Oh man, I've just seen the worst thing. One of my buddies, Mark Pellegrini. You know how they have the horrible bean face Cal Arts remakes of everything?
Yeah.
He just found and shared a Cal Arts bean face promo thing that somebody made of Grave of the Fireflies.
I shouldn't laugh like that, but that's like oh no. Oh no. I will say though, like it's thinking of all that stuff of like Hollywood and stuff like that falling apart. At least like there's still guys like Henry Cavill, Harry Potter or the Hunger Games. He looks at him like the guy's stupid. Lord of the Rings. We don't deserve him. Hmm. I know they're doing Cal Arts Thundercats right now.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's where that parody thing. It's Grave of the Fireflies, famine. Oh, that's horrible.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for it. What's that one movie? Princess Mononoke. Uh, Cal Arts. But you know what's not Cal Arts? Cirsova magazine. For that, we're grateful.
You know, who knows? Maybe sometime for do Cal Arts versions of our previous covers.
Just like put out on April
I don't even
1st.
know how that would work.
Right. Well, no, just do a normal cover, except it's like Cal Arts and it's like the April 1st cover. And it's like, all right, Cirsova, that was funny. That was very funny, one time. Don't do it again, please. Like reveal the cover.
Right now, yeah. Right now, I've got so much art that's been commissioned and worked on that I'm a little tapped out to spend any more on something that would just be a joke.
Right.
Covers for spring and summer lined up, and I've got a yes, we can do this on the summer non-special for August. So
Mm-hmm. Good. It's fantastic. Hmm. So, excuse me. So if someone's getting into Cirsova, where's a good place to start?
uh, I'd say probably our spring issue from last year is a great place to start. Or if you want to wait for our spring issue for this year, that'll be out in a couple months. There's really no bad place to start, I'd say. If I will admit that our first few issues did not have the quality proofing that we do now, so they're a little bit rougher around the edges, but they're still all good. All the stories in them are good.
Oh yeah.
They were just not cleaned up as well as they could have been because I'm not the best copy editor.
Right. I'm actually looking forward to at work when I do my own first and second pass of editing for my books before I send it off to a proper editor. And it's like my coworkers and employees are going to be like, "Ben, what's that?" It's like, why are you striking through basically everything?" It's like, "Listen, guys, I take my books very seriously." And then of course it'll be published, and then there'll be like a comma, two commas in a row, just staring at you on the
Oh
first
yeah,
page, and it's like,
that reminds me. Like it was a few weeks back or a month ago or so. Someone was going after me like on Twitter, like calling me out for I don't know, using some word wrong, and it turned out that I used the word right and the punctuation was correct, and he got called out on that. But he did the whole, I've been published a lot and no editor has ever cut any of my prose. And I'm like, I don't know that any editor has been looking at your prose, because like it turns out all of his pro publications are like the Manzin Wars Volume 28 or whatever the hell they're slapping Larry Niven's name on, just to.
So,
It's like, oh geez.
I don't even know if those sell anymore. Like, I've never heard anyone talking about them.
And I only know about the Manzin Wars because it's funny to meme about. It's like, oh, here in normal, totally not furry mainstream science fiction.
It's like, you know, like somebody dies, you discover that they're a furry while picking through their stuff, and it's like just boxes of Manzin Wars. And it's like, no. And you're like stuck there and you have this like existential crisis holding like somebody who actually bought the Manzin Wars.
The Manzin Wars. And like some I've seen some really cringy covers of like some CJ Shera books with the furry cat peoples.
Right? And it's like, so you've got these like short-tempered Klingons in fur, you know, like and it's like, we can do 100 different stories about them. No, there was like one good story about them, and then the rest of it was you know, culturally irrelevant. Uh,
Weren't they created for the cartoon show?
I don't even know. Like
Jeez,
we
that's the oldest stuff I remember. Is I thought that they were created like as a one-off for the cartoon show, because on the cartoon they're like, hey, we can have aliens. They're more strange than just Italians with bad makeup. Or
yeah. No, I think they're in the original series, the Klingons. Um,
the Klingons are,
yeah.
but like then it was just like let's get some guys and like give them arched eyebrows and say that they're aliens.
It's like you got like one dude in their budget thing, and he's like, "Thank goodness," you know. And then he just reuses to swap some things out, creates a batla, and then goes for it. And don't.
Come to think about it, it's kind of surprising that like the Xen never showed up in any other Star Trek stuff except for the cartoons and the books. You know,
Wait, I thought they were part of a Larry Niven thing, not Star Trek.
Larry Niven wrote them for Star Trek.
Oh my goodness. Everything
Um,
makes so much sense.
to go to the internet right quick. I'm
Right.
sure that the Xen are Star Trek.
Military sci-fi. No, they're set in the known space universe. Okay. Okay, good. I could stop freaking out.
Also written by Niven into the Star Trek universe, first appearing in Star Trek the Animated Series.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
And looks like Star Trek the Animated Series. Yeah, so the fact that it is yeah. So Star Trek universe briefly intersected with the Larry Niven furry universe, but
Yeah, we're still here.
it was supposed to be an Enterprise, but never made it in because the series was canceled.
Right. Sounds about right. I did like Enterprise though. Hold on a second. I'm just going to real quick check our audio in another place.
Right.
I'll be right back. Well, I'll be right with you. I'm still going to be here.
Right.
Yeah,
And look, I swear, I actually don't know anything except like from memes about the Xen and Xenti.
Right.
Like I've never actually read any of these books. It was just sort of a, whoa, what? This mainstream guy is totally writing furry cat people books,
Right.
and they're still publishing these furry cat people books.
Well, it's like I'm looking at the names of people. Most of them is this dude called Hal Kolbach, who I've never heard of before now. Um, it's like like there's some Paul Anderson, that sort of thing in the early ones, Jerry Parnell. So it's like ooh, but then it's like I almost feel sorry because like Brad Torgerson apparently did man had something in Man's In Wars or something called Scrith, and I've never seen him advertise it, and I'm Facebook friends with him, and it's like oh no, that's not good. Uh, that's all right. That's the important when you don't kill your franchise when they need to be killed. I only hope he's profiting off of it.
Man, who knows? Who even knows?
Right. I don't even. I'm like looking it over through Wikipedia. Um, though who knows? Brad Torgerson could have been advertising it. I never realized it. Um, but like one of the actually thinking of that, like I talking about prices and stuff like that because Cirsova magazine is affordably priced even after you hike up prices. That's just a part of inflation. Um, his Star Wheeled Sky was stupidly expensive to buy, and I have no conception why they ramped it up. It was like $25 to $30 for the soft cover, and like $12 or $12.99 or something ridiculous like that for the pre-order for the digital edition. And I like to this day like I don't understand the choice, and he's like, just that's what the prices are. And I'm like, they're set by the publisher. I don't care. I'm writing something. I'm like, okay, that's fair. I can't remember what he said exactly. That's not a quote. That's not a quote, but that's just kind of how the conversation went.
Probably our most expensive books right now are the Wild Stars books. We've
Mm,
actually slashed the prices on a few of them, especially the first one, because we didn't want the buy-in to the series to be so high on that first volume,
mm-hmm. That
especially since like that's the older one, that's the comics, the graphic novel, and we really want people to check out the new ones, but you don't also want to start with the fourth book in a series. Even though I do believe you could totally start with the fourth book in the series and then work your way backwards.
mm. I know the.
The hard
Mm,
the hardcover that we put out of that, we sold several of them at a pretty high price tag because it was $100 for it. It was like over 700 pages, weighed 5 pounds. It was coffee table edition.
right. Kill a cat if it lands on it, as you do. That's all right. Fortunately, though, I still enjoy the fact that the pulp rev is continuing. Uh, I don't know if you've checked it out yet, but Hard Moon by David Halquist recently came out by Superversive Press, and its sequel is coming out in a couple days. State of Terra. So it's science fiction pulp. We don't have to dredge up 1970s Star Trek properties apparently for decent literature, which makes me happy. Hmm.
What's the word on the street about the planetary stuff? I know that you guys got those moved over to Richard Paulinelli.
Yep,
Did I say that right?
close enough. Hold on a second. Let me pull it up real quick. It's part of his what is it? It's Tempest something. Uh, there we go. Pluto came out recently. Um, I need to buy the print edition of that actually. It's Tuscany Bay. It's not Tempest. I don't know what the
Skinny
Tempest.
Bay.
Yeah, he took over the Planetary series. They were kind of dragging us down. At least one person has disappeared without sight or sound. possibly dead, but I don't think so. When you get stuck with an anthology that you just don't want to do, the only option is to fake your death, change your identity, and hop to Tijuana, where no one will know
The
your shame.
and one of the reasons I bring it up is that a lot of people have been asking lately about how to start their own thing, do their own either pulp magazine or anthologies. And something someone pointed out, it might have been John Weichsel, that it's really hard to make multi-author anthologies work, especially if they're paid by royalties,
Hmm.
because a lot of independent titles don't do a lot of numbers, and after that initial burst of sales, you're selling maybe one or two copies a month and having to split $3, $4, 11, 12 ways among all the
Hmm.
authors on a regular basis, and it just becomes more of a headache than it's worth accounting wise, which is one of the reasons why we just pay flat rates up front. I don't think that we would be able to do it any other way.
Tuscany
We're
Bay
we're
is
exper-
sorry.
we're experimenting with paying out royalties. We've had some ups and downs, and we're hoping that our next release will have ups for that. But we're also only doing it with one to at most two authors per release, so we're not
Hmm.
having to split that $4, $5 among a dozen people.
Right. There's something to be said. I know Tuscany Bay Books has a similar scheme, but it's like there's something to be said of just getting it out of the way, so that if
Yeah,
weirdness happens, and they're like, "Where's my 50 cents?" You don't suddenly have to pay a dude
oh
50
Lord, I know.
cents of PayPal. And there's fees with that, guys. There's PayPal fees, there's bank fees, there's you have to buy Excel, uh, because the free one won't have as many options. It's just kind of all over the place. Uh, though if anyone is recommended, it's like I want to start my own thing. It's like contribute a few things, help out a few things, so that you know whether you like it or not. Like I help run a gym in St. Louis, and it's like, well, I want to be an operations manager like you, and I just kind of turned to them, and it's like I was running 50-hour weeks before they locked my hours to 40 a month, 40 a week, like, and I was still running around and finding more things I had to do. Like you don't want my job. You just want to get a promotion and a raise. Uh, you know, well, I don't know.
If you're not doing it by royalties, it's not that difficult to start a publication. And I've told a few people who've asked, really, it's just a few steps. The hard one is have some money and find out what you're willing to pay for stories and artwork.
Hmm.
Uh, then you put out a call for stories. You let websites like Raylan, Submission Grinder, Duotrope, Market Maven, just a few other places like that know that you are buying stories and what you're going to pay for them and when you are going to read them.
Hmm.
Then you read and buy the stories, and once you've paid everybody for the stories, format them, slap a cover on it, upload the files to a print-on-demand outfit, and you've got a publication.
Yep.
It's, it's a lot of work, but it's not difficult.
Yeah. And it's just a lot of it's just kind of keeping on top of things. Like I have
Yeah.
to do the Soul anthology, and I'm helping out Superversive Fiction with a few things, that sort of deal. And by the way, the Soul anthology is still open if you want to email Tuscany Bay Books from their website. Um, excuse me. And it's I really do have to read the 12 or 13 odd stories I have, make sure that I choose the salvageable ones, and then edit them and send them back to their authors. and then have someone copy edit it because I don't actually know how commas work sometimes.
I swear nobody does.
It's like, listen, man, it's just whenever you want to pause. I know, but is it like a long pause? Is it a 5 second pause? Is it a breath pause? If you just have a gap between words and it's like, some sort of somewhere.
Just throw an M dash in there.
Oh
When in
yes,
doubt, throw in an M dash.
that's a good one. Actually, I one time had to edit a book pretty heavily because I misused hyphens and em dashes. It's a hard life, Cirsova. Hard life indeed. And by the way, for those who don't know, a hyphen is only so long, and a em dash is like 1 to 2 millimeters. Lord forbid me for using metric. Longer than a hyphen. So it's like two hyphens on top of each other, or next set, end to end. So that's why it's difficult for me. You still there, sir?
I'm here.
Oh, good, good. I was worried my insane ramblings had driven you away.
Oh
But
no,
that's
no.
but that's fair. We've reached our hour. Do you have any last words for us?
We're taking advertisements for the spring issue. If you're interested in getting your stuff in front of some voracious readers and talent, this would be a especially good place if you are someone who does layout work, art, or editing, or any sort of publication service. This would be a really good place to get it in front of the eyes of some of the best authors and aspiring authors in the scene today.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to get all of our ads in by the end of the month. Our rates are published on our website. Go to cursova.wordpress.com. Follow us on Twitter at Cirsova if you dare. Uh, be sure to check out the new issue that's coming out. If you haven't heard of us or haven't read anything by us, check out one of our recent issues. We would definitely recommend the spring 2019 issue. The fall issue is also really good, as is our summer special. If you
Mm-hmm.
like exciting sword and planet adventure, check out Michael Tierney's Wild Stars. It's amazing, it's epic, it'll blow your mind. Thank you a lot for having me here tonight. It's been a lot of fun.
It's always a pleasure to have you on, Cirsova. I'll definitely have you on sometime later in the year so you can update us on the projects and give us, as always, a little bit more
Yeah,
information.
we'll be able to talk a little bit more about the Mongoose and Meerkat Volume 1 anthology as that
Ooh,
comes to fruition in a couple months.
excellent. All right. Well, I'll let you all go. Thank you, as always, for listening to me have a nice fireside conversation every Sunday with somebody different, new, or familiar. Wish you all a good night.